Hello, my name is Brina K. I am here with the new and improved Nashville Diary. As we know, I previously tried to make this kind of a video version of my blog, and that didn't work at all because my blog, I write a lot in my blog, and it took forever to edit, and I did one episode and never did another one. So we're now going to turn it into an interview show where I'm going to interview awesome artists in Nashville to kind of get the behind the scenes of their musical journeys and kind of ask the questions that we typically don't get in interviews that we do. So I have the lovely Shan with me today, and I'm so excited to dive into her story. So Ty, if you would like to just introduce yourself, and this will kind of be the one and only basic question we'll do for the duration of the interview. So you can just kind of introduce yourself and kind of just give us a background and overview of who you are as an artist and how you ended up in good old Nashville.
That's awesome. I'm a singer-songwriter. I've been a singer-songwriter. I'm 38 now, and I started performing in clubs and stuff when I was 18. So my goodness, it's now been 20 years. There you go. And I came to Nashville 3 years ago. I do a duo with my husband, and we were touring pretty extensively, doing about 150 dates a year. And then, pandemic and all that stuff happened. I also had a baby in there. So now I'm also a mom to a toddler. I have a 2-year-old. So, style wise, I'm Americana music, but think like Nora Jones is a good example of what to expect.
Awesome. Well, for those of you guys who don't know at home, I actually met Ty through a songwriting group that I'm in. I've mentioned that in the blog, in the earlier days of the blog, where I just kind of
Uh-huh.
happenstance with an Uber driver that had previously been a part of the Song Salon and got me in contact. And then I just kind of showed up one day, didn't know anybody, but I was like, okay, there's this group that this Uber driver told me about, and the rest was kind of history. So that's how I know Ty, and I really wanted to make Ty the first one to interview for this, just because she's so cool and always contributes a lot to our, commentary and feedback at Song Salon has really helped me as a writer. Uh,
Oh,
and so I felt like you'd be a good first person for this. And hopefully, this goes so successful that we do more episodes besides
I
the
love it.
last one. So we're going to dive into the diary part of the Nashville diary, which is to kind of get into questions that don't kind of just show, oh, this is, I'm on social media and everything's perfect all the time. That's not what this is about. We know that it's not that way in the real world. So what would you say is your biggest internal and external obstacles that you face as an artist?
Um, I like it. You had said internal and external. I think internal is like no matter how long I've been in the business, I always feel like a newbie at things because the bar is constantly raising. Um, I also am a teacher, and I had one of my students. Um, this last year, I was working with her on auditions, and she did great. She got into Berkeley School of Music in Boston, and got into American, and basically into a lot of great music schools is my point. But like she was expected to compose like 3 songs, and she was expected to do a video entry that was like edited together with her songs and then videos of her performing. And anyway, so it was one of these things I was like, oh my God, like it was like a taste of what is expected of us as artists is we're constantly having to be like, okay, I wrote this really great song, and they're like, and then I feel like the feedback is always like, okay, but did you make a video for it? And did you get it on a Spotify playlist? And what is your marketing campaign for releasing this song? And what you know, what is the people that you're marketing to, and how have you reached out to them? And it's always like it feels like there's all these steps. So as I was watching my student go through this, I was like, wow, it's really great that she's learning these tools on editing at like 17. Uh, but I feel like that was a slice of what is expected of us as artists constantly. So I think internally, it's always feeling new to like everything, you know? Like, I think I got this. Oh wait, I've got to learn this skill to be able to now do it, you know? So externally, I think image is a big thing. You see a lot of influencers that spend a lot of time on their image and their branding, and that I like that kind of stuff. And then I feel like a little daunted by it, especially after having a child. There's this whole world of like, you're not going to get your bod back post or pre-baby, you know, in your post-baby world. So that's the fun part of marketing and branding after you have kids.
I feel like I can totally agree with that. I feel like it's almost, we are artists and we want to be artists, but at the same time, especially in today's like landscape with social media, it's like you almost have to be kind of an artist and an influencer and a brand and like all of these things at the same time. Like it's so much beyond like your music and what you're writing. It's like that's level one, and then we have to do all this other stuff on top of it. And of course, right now as independent artists, we're doing everything. So it's a big undertaking for sure.
And I see, like, Brina, you do a great job of being an influencer, I think. Like with your TikTok and just the way you engage with people. And so like I'm gonna ask you a question real quick.
Yeah, for
Which
sure.
is like, what do you struggle with your own internal struggles with having, having such a presence that you're constantly having to update? Like, I want to hear your internal struggle.
Oh yeah, definitely. I feel like for me, it's been a struggle many times. I think I kind of have found that I feel more comfortable on TikTok. I think just because of the way the algorithm works, where I can just kind of talk about random things that I find interesting. But I think for me, especially, I mean, even before I was an artist, just like as a young kid growing up, in the prospect of, oh, I want to have this many likes on my picture. Like I used to try so hard and I used to think so hard about like how many likes I would get. And one of my songs that we've got coming up on EP2 is about, like, there is actually a blog entry kind of about when I was trying to get my look together for the Heat of the Moment promo and like all of those pictures and things like that. And I was trying to find a dress and I couldn't find a dress that I liked in the whole mall. I couldn't find a single one. And at that time too, I was literally staying up till 4 in the morning so that I could post my pictures on Instagram, because that was like the optimum time to post your pictures on Instagram.
It
And
was
like,
4 in the morning?
because it's like you
No
get the
way.
late night crowd and then you get it like pops up in the morning. So literally, and I previously had like an app that would schedule it, but then it was when it was getting posted with the scheduling one, it wasn't posting it with like the best quality. So I was like, I have to manually do this. So I was literally staying up till 4 in the morning just to post my picture on Instagram. And I was like, I can't be doing that anymore. That's not healthy. So yeah, I think there's definitely been a lot of struggles. And I feel like for me, it's just been trying to put my energy, one, where like I get the most responses,
Hmm.
and two, just like having that balance of, okay, like I'm putting myself out there, but I'm not going to let it become like so stressful, and trying to
Hmm.
like do things that feel like authentic and not like, oh, I'm trying to craft this image of this perfect person. That's kind of like why I'm doing this and why I'm doing the blog, where it's like, okay, I could really try to always have this perfectly crafted image all the time, or I can really like lean into the authentic and the imperfect and share those things. Is like, to me, honestly, that's much more interesting, and I feel like a lot of people relate to that more. So I think it's just trying to find, what is it to be an influencer and how can I switch it or like mold it into something that feels me. Because I feel like for the longest time I was trying to just chase, what I was seeing and mold myself into that instead of the other way around. And I think I've learned to kind of take the idea of that, but take influencer, but make it Brina.
Yeah,
So
totally. Oh,
it's
that's fun. That's fantastic.
yeah, I mean, it's still a learning curve. Like there'll be days where I feel like I'm killing it, and other days where I'm like, oh gosh, like right now on TikTok, I have 19,000 followers, which seems like a lot when I was just trying to hit like 10,000. But then I know people who have a million who started at the same time as me, and I'm like, okay, what am I doing that I don't have a million yet? So it's all relative. So you got to just keep like, staying positive and just moving at your own pace.
Yeah, and I think one thing that you just mentioned there was the comparison game, which is an evil game to play if you are an artist and comparing yourself to literally anything else. Like I find myself like comparing myself to my friends that have houses and things, you know?
Oh yeah.
So, yeah, so like that comparison game, it's just pure sadness, isn't it? It's just they're pure sadness most of the time, unless you're like, oh, look how far I've gotten compared to this person that is just started out, or compared to somebody you went to high school with, and they're stuck in the same old town I've become. But it's never sweet, is it? You're like, it's a sad game. And unfortunately we all play it.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like that's kind of a big, like, kind of like an internal battle. Kind of, we were talking about internal versus external, and I feel like I definitely have my days where I still will play that game, but I try my best to like, as I feel like, I don't know. I think I grew up playing sports and things like that, so I've always kind of had like a competitive mindset, and it's taken a lot of like internal work to not think of music as a competition. Even like, I mean,
Hmm.
we would see American Idol and things like that, and it's like, oh, it's a competition, but like I've really had to untrain my brain from thinking that way, and instead of seeing other artists as like a threat or like someone I'm competing against for airplays and things like that, it's like, no, like we're a community and we're all here to support each other and learn from each other. And I feel like like this is a good example of like, hey, I think you're awesome, so I'm going to have you on my show and we're going to like talk about things, and our song salon where we will get together and all help each other become stronger. And so I feel like that's played a big role in helping me shift my mindset, because for the longest time, especially when I was younger, I used to think like, oh, I gotta stay on my toes and work really hard so that I'm better than this artist. And it's just like, that is such a stressful way to live. So I'm glad I don't feel that way anymore. What was your biggest goal when you started your music career, and what is it now, and how has it changed?
Wow, that's great. um my biggest goal when I was a kid, I mean, and this is to put aside like playing for millions of people or whatever, but like when it really boils down to it, it's to have a perfect day. And a perfect day, and I actually, when most of the people I work with when I teach, I have them do this exercise and they write out, what is your perfect day look like? For me, my perfect day was, I would wake up, I would have a great breakfast. I would go for a walk in the woods. And then I would come home and I would do some kind of writing, or maybe do some studio work or something to do with that. And then I would show up for sound check, and then play this show that people were listening to, and then I would go home. And so I this assignment is called the perfect day, and I liked having my students do it. I have a lot of students that, like, I'll work with them right before they choose college, or I work with a wide range of people. But the point is that like a lot of times it can kind of help us figure out like where we want to live. Like, if in your perfect day, whether you wake up and you hear the sounds of the city, it's going to tell you whether you belong in a city or in the country. So, when I was a kid, I wanted to be able to tour. Like, I wanted to do frequent gigs. I wanted to be able to walk in the park and stuff like that. So, it's interesting that a lot of the touring that I did, I would always try to make time to do like a hike. We'd even plan our trips so that like Monday and Tuesday are kind of crap days to play shows. So Monday and Tuesday we would stay at like Lookout Towers in Montana and Wyoming and California, Oregon, Washington. That's where most of them are. In Nevada, and then we would do gigs over the weekend, and that way I'd get my like outdoor time, and then play the gigs over the weekend, and that's how I tried to pull off my perfect day. I think for me, like I have to have my perfect day be something attainable, because if I just say like, oh, it's gonna play for a million people, well, like I'm gonna be really sad for a long time. So I gotta lower my standards and just like be like, and like play for people that really care, that kind of thing. So yeah, we even did backpacking trips, and did like traveled all the way down to Baja and stuff like that by touring and then using various storage units to like shove our gear in so we could go do a backpacking trip and then come back out, get the gear, go back out on tour.
That's awesome.
So I
So,
think
like,
that
what? I'm
go
sorry.
ahead.
You're totally
I
good.
said it.
Um,
I was like, I
but
think I answered your question.
yeah, no, totally. So you mentioned touring. Like, have you learned anything profound about like yourself as an artist or even as a person, like through the process of touring? Because that's a big undertaking. I know my roommate and I have been trying to. She's a songwriter too. I'll probably have her on the show, but um, we've been trying to figure out a way to tour or do something like that, and it's a huge undertaking. So to be able to not only plan everything but execute it is a big deal, and it seems like it's a lot of work and could be very stressful. So is there anything like just the process of touring like has taught
Mm-hmm.
you, anything you walked away from that tour that you felt was like a profound change?
Oh, for sure. I think like there's a couple questions in there, like like how to book. To answer that question, I usually will start with anchor gigs. Those are paid guarantee gigs. Those are the farthest booked out. And those can be, usually you need some kind of anchor. In the early years of touring, those weren't very great. They would be like a winery gig where I was getting paid $100 or something. Um, Weddings were great for many anchor gigs. So I knew like I had to be in California for a wedding. Anytime somebody got married that was a friend of mine, they would usually ask me to play the wedding, and then that would be my anchor gig for a tour. So you start with something that you know you have to be at, and it doesn't necessarily have to be very big, but that helps put all the other pieces together. So, and then I usually start in January booking tours, because that's when most of the like festivals and farmers markets and things get booked. I would say that like my my favorites honestly are a lot of like farmer market kind of things because they're low overhead. I usually have to bring my gear, which you asked me to take away. Always bring your own gear because
Yeah.
I have played way too many shows at places where they're like, yeah, we got a soundboard. And then you get there and they're like, oh yeah, man, they just spilled beer all over it last night. You know, like I played a gig this summer and I didn't bring my gear because we flew in, and oh wait, no, we didn't. We drove, but anyway, it doesn't matter. I didn't have my gear. And the sound guy showed up like 45 minutes late. So annoying. um, anyway, so bring your own stuff. Um, uh, but my point is, yeah, January I book the smaller ones and then start putting in house concerts and things like that. So as far as my takeaways from actually being on tour, um, people are super nice if you give them a chance. We have found hosts that housed us by like walking into karaoke bars
Wow.
and like just singing a song and then saying from the mic, hey, we don't have any place to stay tonight. Does anybody have any place? And then once we got our little touring trailer, that was a lot easier. Like most venues will let you will like have a parking space that you can crash out in your little trailer for the night. But I'm really surprised that I've like, oh, like one gig we met some people and they're like, come with us to if you come play our campground, we'll pay you like $150. And this is after the show. They said, come play our campground, we'll pay you $150 and you can stay there. And we descended into this like incredible valley that I'd never seen before in my life. It was in like north eastern Washington. And I just there things like that happen all the time where you meet people that become lifelong friends, and it was just because they were like, hey, do you want to come hang out? And you have to just be like, okay, you don't look that crazy, you know, or like you look like I can follow you to a second location, which is a whole nother matter. um, but yeah, I miss being on tour just because of the kindness of other people. I think COVID has made it really hard to trust someone that I just met. But anyway, yeah, that's the gist of touring.
Yeah, definitely. And that sounds so that's it feels like there's definitely a lot of adventures, especially when it's like, you're an independent artist, you're doing it all yourself. So literally, yeah, to be up there and be like, hey, did anyone know where we could stay tonight? Like that sounds, I think to like the average person that might sound like, oh my gosh, like a little bit crazy, but to us it's like, yeah, it's all part of it and it's so much fun. And it's like, just gotta be safe, obviously, but
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of resources. Like if you end up if you have a little trailer or you can sleep in your car, there's a bunch of resources. All Stays is a great app for finding where to stay. And you'd be surprised at like places that you can stay that you had no idea. Like, did you know that there are hookups in all fairgrounds? Every city, well, not every like major town has a fairground, um, or some kind of like expo area, and they will have hookups. And most of the time, those hookups are $5 a night,
oh wow.
and you can go there and stay there even if there's nothing going on. Now you will be creepily in a very dark like fairground by yourself all night. Yeah. but you still will have a place to stay for $5.
That's that's awesome. That's so cool. Well, I think that kind of goes into my next question too. When you're talking about, obviously touring is a lot of fun, but there's probably a lot of challenges. So in the tough moments, not just touring, but being an artist in general, what inspires you to keep going?
I think there's no other choice, is there? I mean, like, I would say I'm in a tough spot right now. Like, being a mom to somebody who's like, my toddler is like, they just suck energy off of you. You like end the day just very depleted. And like, it, there's nothing in my mind that's like, oh, I'm just gonna like not be a musician anymore. Like, I know that I will always be a musician. Um, but I think the capacity changes. Like, I know that my capacity for things is depleted. So what do I do at that point? And most of the time I just have to be really honest with people. Like, I showed up half an hour late to a co-write the other day, because I thought it was at 6 p.m. and he rightly so said it was at 5:30, and I was wrong. He was right. And he was still on the Zoom call. It was a Zoom call thing. And like a half an hour later when I realized that I showed up late. And like I hate that. I hate that like now I'm the kind of person that is that forgetful and that kind of like just not as aware as I used to be. Um uh but the only thing I can do is just like ask for forgiveness and then just kind of keep going, because what is my other option? Like, either I don't do it or I do. That's the only thing I got.
If you could change anything, like wave a wand and change anything about the music industry right now, what would it be?
Hmm. Um, I wish that things were more transparent. I think that there is a lot of like, why don't we talk about what we pay for things? We're so quiet about that, or what we're getting paid. And I wish there was a better way, because you like, you see this a lot in, like, if you ever read The Grapes of Wrath, where they would pay. That's a story about migrants that came from Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, and they came out to California to hopefully survive, since they had lost their home and their farms in Oklahoma to the Dust Bowl stuff. And what was interesting about that time is that the pickers would go in, and they would the pickers the people that were the foremen were like, okay, it's 25 cents a box, and they would pick that box, but then they could change the price on them the next day and say, like, oh, now it's 15 cents a box. And anybody that, like, complained about it, they would out them, and basically they were able to charge or pay what they wanted to pay. And I feel like the music industry is sometimes the same way, that we're like, that some places are, that we're really guarded on what we're paying for, and what people are charging for. And I wish that there was a little more transparency on, like, okay, you want to work with this producer, this is their rate. And I don't like that thing where people say, well, what is your budget? What do you want to pay for it? And I struggle with that. I'm curious, actually, if you've had this where they say, what do you want to pay for it? Have you had that happen before?
Yeah, I've definitely like I from everything from like videography to photography to like makeup and producing. Yeah, I think that's definitely something I've come across. Uh and it's
Uh,
interesting.
and,
I feel like it kind of the way I've experienced it is more just like they're trying to work with your budget kind of, but I don't know. It's definitely interesting because it's not. I
yeah,
mean, in a lot of obviously a lot of different industries, like prices are usually more set.
it's a little more standardized in other industries. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess, and I know this is such an interesting thing, because I know a lot of people that, like, love getting bro deals, but it would be nice if you knew, if they said what they normally make. And most of the time, like, when I ask, well, what do you normally charge for this? Like, they go, well, no, just tell me what your budget is. And I'm like, well, this, like, I hate doing that guessing game, you know?
Yeah,
I'm curious what your answer to that question is.
if I would change anything, I think for me it would be that I feel like a lot of times, especially like labels and things like that, like they're looking at your follower count before they're looking at your music. And I feel like it should be the
Mm.
other way around. Like I think it obviously makes sense from a business standpoint to want to go after people who already have a following, but I think a high following doesn't always equate, good quality music. And it is very frustrating as like an artist to see people who, are very successful influencers just, you know, decide they want to become music artists just for the hell of it, and like
Mhm.
watching that it is very it's hard. And obviously as a musician, like we talked about social media before, and like we all kind of feel very obligated to be in that, not necessarily because we want to, but because it's like it's part of getting noticed. And I think it can be a really great tool, but it can also be very disheartening when you see somebody who clearly, hasn't had a passion for it like we have our whole lives and worked really hard tooth and nail and sacrificed so much, just kind of get it solely based on a social media following. So I feel like, if it's good to find people who already have a following, but also, seek out the people who have really good music and are really passionate about it and have been for the get-go, from the get-go. What would you say is a musical skill that you've mastered and one that you would still like to work on? Maybe not, I mean, you never master anything in this world, I guess, but something you would feel super confident in to say like, "Hey, I'm a master at this," like, um, yeah.
Yeah, it's a great question. I would say mastering. I'm really good at listening. So that tends to mean on stage, I'm a pretty good improviser, especially lyrically. I can take a suggestion from the audience and write a song um, on the spot. Uh, and you most of the time have some other kind of element to it. When I was on tour, I would do improv songs. They're based off something that somebody said, somebody gave me from the audience. And then I would get everybody in the audience involved, either like sing along or like we used to have all different ways we do it. Like we have a microphone ball. It's like a dodgeball with a microphone in it, and we toss it out to the audience and have them add different sound effects or sing different parts and then loop it and sing over the top of it. So I would say like that's one of my fortes is like making a magical moment that like people have a little moment with us in a room together and yeah, that I think that's the thing I would say. Not necessarily that like there's nothing I can do to top it, but it's one thing I'm good at.
I totally agree with
Uh,
that. I've seen you at shows and you're very good at like bringing in the audience and getting people to sing along. I personally am I have like such a fear of like asking people to sing along and like what if they don't sing back? I'm just like I'm definitely like that is definitely a skill I think people don't think about as much as like being able to pull the audience in and have them be like participants in the show and like keeping them engaged the whole time.
yeah, like one way to think about it is you want your audience to breathe. When you think about like, okay, how do you make them breathe? Okay, they either literally take a breath, they move their body. That can be clapping or stomping or dancing, and they can laugh. So, oh, and they can sing, and that's the one we've heard a lot of. So you sing, move your body, breathe, and laugh. After about when you think about how long somebody sits in a chair, they have a tendency to compress their spine after about 30 minutes. So 30 minutes into your set, that's the moment where you have to, and I usually do about 20. That's the moment where you have to start engaging breathing. And it can be all sorts of things, like in house concerts. It could be yawns, it could be stretching, it can be talking to somebody next to you. We've done anything from like doing exercises with people in the audience where they'd turn to the person next to them and ask them repeatedly what makes you happy over and over again, and they'd have to answer with a new answer every time. Um, we've done things where like we've taped um, bubbles underneath people's chairs. And that's a great trick, by the way. We've used bubbles a lot, and that's really great for people that deal with ADHD in your audience. Like, we've all had audience times where like people are like drinking beers and like really loud, or like just like they can't control their body, and sometimes they're just being jerks, and then other times you can really rope them into your concert in a cool way. So most of the time, like when I'm on my game, like I'll scan the audience before I go on stage and like find the troublemakers, and then I will go to them. And keep in mind, like my shows, I'm not doing a lot of like bar gigs, because this would be hard to do in a bar gig, although I have done it. um is I'll go up to my little troublemaker and give them a vial of bubbles, and I'll say, whenever you think that there needs to be bubbles in this room, you have permission to do it.
That's so fun.
And you know what it does is, like, you can't be talking when you're doing bubbles, right? So you that shuts them up at the moment that they think is important to the song, and it makes them listen. So if you can get them to listen and blow, then they're gonna not be talking through your set. So anyway, so that's a trick for those people. Uh yeah. So getting them to move is another one. We always bring shakers. This mostly has to do with kids. But we always have shakers available to include people. I think that's a really big component that I really like for younger kids, because they feel like they're never going to be as good as you are on the stage. That leap is so far. And so if you can, as an artist, this is great at like farmers markets and things where you're on the same level as them. If you can rope them into the band, and instruct them, you have to instruct them while you're singing, which is hard. But anyway, and have them, we do shaker solos or shaker dance offs. A lot of Taylor Swift, like shake it off stuff.
Yeah.
But that I've had people contact me like years later and be like, yo, that time that you roped my kid into shaking on stage was the start of their musical
Aw.
adventure. Yeah. So yeah, super special. Anyway, so I can't remember how I got onto this breathing thing, but that's
Yeah,
a
you're
thing to
good.
think about.
Yeah. So it was, what is the skill you feel like you've mastered, and then what is one that you feel like you have to work on as an artist?
Oh, let's do the work on. Let's see. What do I need to work on? Um. Oh God. Let's do the biggest one. Not beating myself up.
I feel
Um.
that. For me.
Yeah. God. Yeah. I think like that tough skin thing is really, really hard. I find to, like, especially when you screw something up. I hate screwing things up. It really bums me out. I don't think anybody likes screwing things up. Actually, it probably bums everyone out. Um, like, I don't know. I'd love to know, like, how the progress goes for you in terms of, like, when you screw something up, and as an artist, like, how long does it take you to recover from it, and how do you find your way through recovery and building that thick skin around it?
Yeah, I feel like it's something I've definitely worked on. I think I just really try to view everything as a learning experience.
Mhm.
And I try to like tell myself that, you know, it's better to go do something and screw up than it is to play it safe and not do anything at all. So even like we had like a conference actually for like an alumni group in my school called the Nashville Women's Leadership Network, and they hold like a conference every year. Actually, they do two. They do one in the fall and one in the spring. But one of the themes for one of the conferences was life begins at the end of your comfort zone. And I felt like that really stuck with me. And so I've been trying to like keep that mindset of, it's very easy to not take steps and to not do things, and then you can never screw up, right? Because you never do anything. But if you're out there putting yourself out of your comfort zone and risking screwing up, if you still screw up, like it's not a failure. It's like it's a it's a checkpoint on the way to success. It's something that you can pull from and learn how to improve at the next time. So I think just trying to view it in that manner, like, yeah, on the spot, like if I'm singing and my voice cracks or I sound bad or something, like yeah, that doesn't feel good in the moment, but I can then take that back and work on it and make it good for the next time. And I'm still proud of myself for getting up there. So that's how I try to look at it. But
Yeah.
easier, there's
Yeah.
definitely easier some days than others.
I
I think,
totally hear you.
yeah, at the end of the day, I just try to like applaud myself for taking imperfect action and getting out there and just doing my best, honestly. Like sometimes you just gotta go and give your best, and maybe your best that day isn't great, but you're still there and you're still going for it, and that's what matters at the end of the day is like putting yourself out there.
I totally agree. It's so interesting when you think of like, okay, having the dream, like having the dream is like being like standing next to the diving board at the pool. Like you have to go through so many steps to jump off that diving board. And I've always like, I work with a lot of kids, and they'll be like, oh, I have a dream of being a songwriter. And I'm like, oh, that's my favorite part. The part you're at right now is the best it's ever gonna be. Because you can dream about it like so easily, and you can aspire to it and want it so badly, and then every other step after that is so vulnerable and just nerve-wracking and hard, and beautiful too. But yeah, yeah. What one time have you ever heard of Half Dome?
Have I
It's
ever
in it's
what?
in Have you ever heard of the mountain Half Dome? It's in Yosemite. It's in
I don't
California.
think so, but
Okay,
sounds
it's
cool.
this amazing iconic mountain. It's got if you saw it, you'd be like, "Oh, I've seen this mountain before." It's like half
Okay.
of its face is missing. Anyway, a point is I went to I we got a lottery ticket to climb Half Dome when we were on a backpacking trip, and we had not planned to do it. And I was standing at the bottom, and it's got about 700 feet. I think it's 700, but you'd have to fact check me on this. But it's got a bunch of cables that you have to pull yourself up the side of a granite face to get to the top of it. And maybe every 10 feet there's a board that's nailed into the ground, and these were put in the early like 1900s, 1900 and 1920s. So think like janky old cables and boards like that are this thick that are nailed into the side of this granite face, and you go up the side of it. It's so steep that when people drop their water bottle, it goes bong bong bong. You're like, oh my god, I'm gonna die.
Yeah.
And when I got to the base of it, there was a guy coming down with a cigar in one hand and shoveling, like just like scooting down with one hand and a cigar in the other. And I remember him saying, like, talking to his 11-year-old granddaughter as they were coming down, saying, "You just have to face it. You just have to face your fear." And I looked at them and I was like, I can do this. I can go to the top of this mountain. And I climbed up, and about halfway through, I lost my shit. It was so freaking scary.
Mhm.
And I got to the top, and I literally had a mental breakdown and was
Oh my
like,
gosh.
"Oh my god, I'm not going to make it off this mountain." Keep in mind, Sylvester Stallone didn't want to come down off that mountain either, and they had to rescue or not rescue him, but like I think he just had a helicopter pick him up. Anyway, so yeah, so like I like had this horrible mental breakdown on the top of this mountain because I thought I was gonna die.
Yeah.
Because I was worried about supporting my body weight with if I slipped and fell. And anyway, so I literally called everybody I loved
Oh.
and left them a message saying I don't know if I'm going to make it,
Oh.
and then had to just find the strength to like make it down. And fortunately, there was a guy behind me that was like shouting out people coming up saying, "Hey, she's really, really in a bad place. She's nervous. Like, help her out and get around her quickly." Because every time somebody passes you, you have to let go of one of the cables, which
Mhm.
is hard to support your body weight on one hand. Um, and my point to this is that like if I had just stayed down there, it would have been way easier. I could have dreamed the rest of my life about climbing Half Dome and not doing it.
Mhm.
But every other step was so freaking hard. And looking back on it, I mean, I'm glad I did it. Like, I didn't know that you can find strength when you are really rattled, when you're like lost. Really, like it was the lowest confidence I'd ever have in my entire life. Like I was like, "There's no way I'm going to make it out of this." Um, yeah, and yet here we are. So
Yeah, definitely. I feel like also it's like in conquering that, it's like, okay, I freaking climbed down this mountain and I was scared to death. So like going and writing the song or playing the show, that's no big deal. Like I feel like you can have those moments and it's so terrible in the moment, but like that totally like raises your capacity to do scarier things, if that makes sense. Or to do things that are like less scary but still scary. But I feel like the more you do, the more you put yourself out there and like go out of your comfort zone, like you kind of teach yourself to not be afraid of lesser things. I feel like.
I hope so.
I mean, crap, it's like you climb this mountain, like what else? Bring it on with everything else, right?
Well, total yes, totally. Yeah. Have you like I want to know if it's cool to ask like what is the scariest, it could be scariest in terms of actual scary or just scariest in terms of your career choices that you had to make?
Honestly, I feel like the biggest hurdle I've had was just coming down here in the first place. Like I didn't know I visited Nashville one time, like with my parents, and then decided to move here. Didn't know anybody, and like I thought it would be no big deal because I already went to college and didn't know anybody. But like
Mhm.
in college you have like activities and RAs and sorority rush and like things that facilitate making friends and things like that. And like I got dropped off at this house that or this apartment that felt like I was intruding in someone else's apartment because it was just it didn't feel like mine. And it was so bizarre when my mom and my brother like left and I was just there in Tennessee by myself and like didn't know anybody. And I think
Oh.
like at that time, and I was working out that ice cream shop and I like immediately lost my job in like 2 weeks. So I'm here, I don't have any money, I don't have any friends, I'm just by myself in Tennessee, and then I lose my job and like my car breaks down and all these things. And I'm just like, what in the heck am I doing? Like, why did I think that I could do this? And I thought, I really like all of that experience. You've heard my song Rome, like all of the things that I talk about in that is what I was going through. And I really truly was thinking like maybe I should just move back home. Like what am I doing here? I can't make it here. All these amazing people, like what what am I doing? So I think I don't even know. You have to just dig down somewhere and find it. And if you can't get through a week, like get through a day. If you can't get through a day, get through 5 minutes, and then
Mhm.
move the chains like in as little as much time as you can still hold on, like just shrink it down. It's like, oh, I got to get through this amount of time, this amount of time, this amount of time, and then hopefully as it goes on it gets bigger. But yeah, I mean that I went through some really rough times and I didn't have a lot of money. I ran out of like money before I ran out of food before I ran out of money for a week one time. And it was just like, oh my gosh, what the heck, what am I doing? But I think just taking it by those smaller intervals and finding reasons to stay, finding even one reason to stay is what makes the difference.
Mhm. Totally. That's pretty amazing.
Thanks. Yeah, and I feel like that's why it's so important to like talk about these things and why I like talk about it in my blog, because it's like to aspiring artists or to people who just wonder what it's like to live this life, or if people just want to know what it's like to go after any big goal or any big thing. It's important to talk about the hard parts. And I mean,
Mhm.
both of us have gone through a lot of struggles, have felt terrible a lot of times, but like we're still out here doing it. So like we can, so can you at home. So keep on doing it. All right, I think we have time for one more question. If you have time for one more question.
Yeah, yeah.
When all is said and done, what are you doing this all for?
um I think that we're channels. That's I'm not the first person to think this. Um, but I'm not really a religious person per se in terms of Christianity. But I think that we act as conduits for energy, right? And so, like, I think that there's first, I don't think there's a lot of choice in artists that are artists. I think that the faucet is just on sometimes, and the faucet is also off sometimes. So, and what that faucet turns us on to, whether it's a song or whether you're an artist, or I don't know, sometimes people like working with their hands. Like, I don't think that like we choose it. I think we just decide whether we're going to invest in it. Like, I think the faucet comes on for everyone personally. Even people that like say that they're tone deaf and can't sing or whatever, it's like you can still have the faucet turn on and be like, I'm gonna sing today. I'm gonna sing happy birthday, bro. So what I'm doing it for is just um honoring that faucet being on, frankly. um I think as soon as I put my own ego into it, like I'm doing it because I want to be a better person, or like I'm doing it because the world needs to hear my music. I mean, I don't I mean, I'd love that to be true. But I think that honestly, like, us as a human race have to be creative. um I think that's part of what we have to do as a race of people on this planet, is to honor when the faucet's on and do whatever the art is, and just do the work and not worry about if people are going to care about it or not. So yeah.
I love that so much. I wanted that quote of like we don't choose to do it, but we choose whether or not we're going to invest in it. I feel like that like hits a nail on the head so much. And I feel like I've been trying to articulate like what that feels like, and I feel like you just like said it in the most perfect way. But yeah, I definitely like I feel the same way as far as whether or not like, oh, it's like it's a choice or not. Like I I feel like I have no choice really, like, but to do this because I feel like I wouldn't be like true to myself or be like whole as a person if I didn't like pursue like the arts. And I feel like a lot of artists can relate to that, where it's like, yeah, it would be easy to, just get a nice job and have stability but like, my calling is elsewhere almost.
Mhm.
And you're totally right in that, like, yeah, some people choose to invest, you know, more in it than others, but the fact that it is kind of just like this is who we're meant to be sort of thing. Like I feel that pretty hard. But I feel like that was such a cool way to articulate it, in that like, yeah, it's not a choice to be this way, but it is a choice on whether you're going to like invest a lot in it and build it up to like a career. So that's really cool.
It's the way I feel. And I think we're really hard on ourselves in terms of creating quality things. I know I am. You know, you see this in like every, whether people are spending a lot of time, working on their TikTok account, or whether they're working really hard on writing a book, or whatever their art is. We're so hard on ourselves in terms of what we're creating. And I think, what if we twisted it to like, oh, you created today, good for you, like, way to sit down and honor that that is something that's within you and that you are capable of, instead of judging the quality of the art that you're making. um yeah, I often have to think of my critics. At For me, they're flies, and when they start buzzing around and saying like, "This song isn't good. I don't think this song is good," I have to literally get up, and I usually open a door or I open a window, depending on the time of year, and just kind of symbolically let the flies leave the space, and thank them for being here, but just like scoot them out the door. And because for me, like that's not the time for the critic to show up, is right at the beginning of something. It's cool that they come in the revision process, like when I have something, and then I'm ready to like tear into it a little bit. Um, but they actually did a study a few years ago. This is, I think NPR did it, and they talked about creative energy, and they said creative energy comes in waves, and they said basically like set yourself a timer for 40 minutes, and I still do this. Set yourself a timer for 40 minutes because about 20 minutes you're going to hit a lull where feelings come up where you're like, I'm crappy at this, and this is really like this is just garbage, and I can't believe I do this. And that's that moment where you take a break. For me, I open up a door and like just let the flies out. And then they said sit back down and finish your 40 minutes out. Why? Because creative energy comes in waves. And just like the rest of the world, and tides and moon cycles and women's flows and all the crap that happens in the world, it all goes in waves, and sound waves. Ha. So you want to catch the creative wave. And when you feel it dip, that's the moment where you start feeling like you're garbage. Then you have to just and then just come back to it because it's going to come back. And they found that people that stick with it through the second wave, they interviewed a ton of different musicians and writers and art dancers and stuff like that, and that their most creative energy came after they had 20 minutes in. So 20 minutes to 40 minutes. That's your best.
That's so smart, and that's such like a good method to try. Like I haven't thought about that, and I haven't whenever I try to like sit down to do it right versus when it just comes to me, it's a lot more difficult. So that would be like a really good like exercise to try. And I think totally like what you said about not letting the critic come in like immediately. I think it's Pixar that has kind of like a similar philosophy where it's like they they let their ideas be the ugly baby or whatever, like up front, where they don't kind of like the same thing where they're very careful to just like let the idea be, because if they start critiquing it immediately, then it will never materialize and grow up into the beautiful Pixar movie. So
Oh,
they
that's cool.
yeah, I mean it's a good thing to look up because I don't know how I got onto that, but that's what they call it, like, just let it be an ugly baby, and then as it as the idea progresses, then it becomes one of these crazy, because you can't like think of like Frozen or something like that where like I guess that's Disney, but like Monsters Inc. or any of these amazing iconic movies, like if you try to start off like there at the finished product and like compare your new idea to this like amazing finished product, like it will never measure up to that. So they're like, we have to let it be an ugly baby and then let it grow up into our movie. But I just thought it
Oh,
was
that's great. I love that.
yeah. Well, thank you so much for being on my very first interview style episode of the Nashville Diary. I hope you had a fun time. I feel like we had really good conversations and dug into a lot of cool, interesting topics. Where can people find you?
Um, Taishan is spelled Taishan. I'm named after a mountain in China, so that's why I'm a white girl with an Asian name. And you can find me on Spotify, and basically everything that I should be on is Taishan Music. So if you want to find me on Instagram or Facebook or Well, I already said Spotify, but and all the things, it's usually under Taishan Music.
Awesome. Sweet. And is there anything else you would like the people to know? Any closing remarks before we sign off tonight?
Oh, I think we covered it. Brina, you're awesome, and I love your music. And thanks for having me.
Awesome. Thanks. Well, I'm so excited. And hopefully this series lasts better than the first time when I tried to make it. That's one thing about, we talk about making mistakes. Like first first attempt at this was a total failure, but hopefully now it's going to turn into this cool interview show. Like me and Ty have been friends for a while, and I feel like I learned some new things about you during this conversation. So that's really cool. And yeah,
Yeah, thanks for asking me. I love it.
awesome. Well, yeah, I'm Brina K. That is Ty Shan. This is the Nashville Diary, and we will be back with another episode soon. I still haven't decided what dates it's going to be, but I will put that information out there.
Love
All
it.
right.
All right.
Have a good night.
Bye.
Bye.